All right, we're about to dig into one of the most famous stories in the history of neuroscience. And I've got to warn you, it's pretty gruesome. But it's also an absolutely incredible tale of survival that forced scientists to rethink everything they thought they knew about the human brain. So, let's get into it.
So let's just start with this wild question. Could a person actually survive something like this? I mean, an iron rod going completely through your head? Back in the 19th century, the answer would have been a hard no. Not a chance. But then, a man named Phineas Gage happened.
So picture this. It's the 1840s, we're in Vermont. And the guy at the heart of all this is Phineas Gage. He was a railroad foreman, and by all accounts, a great one. Efficient, reliable, well-liked, just a solid guy. Until one day in 1848 changed absolutely everything.
There was an accidental explosion on the railroad, and his tamping iron, we're talking a metal rod over 3 feet long, it just shoots straight up, right through his cheek, behind his left eye, and clean out the top of his skull. It landed almost 80 feet away. And here's the part that just blows everyone's mind. He lived. He was reportedly up, walking, and even talking within minutes. He instantly became this medical mystery.
So just by surviving, Phineas Gage unknowingly walks right into the middle of this huge, heated scientific debate that was raging at the time. Everyone was trying to answer this one massive question. How does this thing in our heads, the brain, actually work? Where do our thoughts, our emotions, our personalities even come from?
So you basically had two big teams, two rival theories. On one side, you had the whole brainers. They thought the brain was basically one big, unified thing. On the other side were the localizers, and they thought the brain was more like a toolbox, with different parts for different jobs. And the crazy thing is, Phineas Gage became Exhibit A for both sides.
Okay, so let's dig into that first group, the whole brainers. Their theory was that the brain's cortex was kind of like a blob of jelly. Seriously, they thought thoughts could just bubble up from anywhere. And if one part got damaged, no big deal. The functions that used to be there would just sort of ooze over to another part. Nothing was locked in place.
Now, the localizers, totally different story. They were all about a thing called phrenology. They saw the brain as a collection of little organs. You had an organ for kindness, an organ for respect, you get the idea. And they had these super detailed maps of the skull pointing out exactly where they thought each one was.
So you've got these two camps completely at odds with each other. And then, bam, the story of Phineas Gage hits the medical world. Immediately, everybody on both sides just pounces on it. They're all thinking, this is it. This is the case that's finally going to prove us right.
Okay, so the way the localizers, the phrenologists, worked was kind of weird. Here's their logic. If you were a really kind person, they thought your kindness organ would actually be bigger, and that bigger organ would push on your skull from the inside and create a little bump. So yeah, they literally believed you could read someone's entire personality just by feeling the bumps on their head.
For the whole brainers, their argument was super simple. They were basically saying, look at this guy. A huge chunk of his brain is just gone. If specific parts had essential jobs, he should be dead. But he's not. He's walking around, he's talking. This proves our point. The brain is one big, flexible unit.
But the localizers came right back at him. They said, of course he lived. The iron rod only damaged the parts of the brain you don't need to stay alive. So for a little while, it was a tie, a total stalemate. Both sides could make his story fit their theory. But there was a secret.
See, Phineas's own doctor, a guy named John Harlow, was holding back a pretty huge piece of the puzzle. Publicly, he was telling everyone, yep, Phineas is fully recovered. But behind the scenes, the real story was, well, a lot messier. And that one secret was about to blow this whole debate wide open.
So Dr. Harlow quietly leaks the real story to a leading phrenologist, a Dr. Nelson Sizer, and Sizer publishes it, and what he reveals is just stunning. The new Phineas was grossly profane, coarse, and vulgar, so much so that, apparently, decent people couldn't stand to be around him. The man who walked out of that accident was not the same man who walked in.
For the localizers, this was everything. This was their smoking gun. They pulled out their brain maps, and yep, the path of the iron rod went right through the spots they'd labeled the organ of benevolence, that's kindness, and the organ of veneration, that's respect. It all clicked. His personality didn't just change randomly, it changed because those specific parts of his brain were destroyed. For them, it was case closed.
So, after all that, who actually won the great brain debate? Did the phrenologists, the guys reading bumps on heads, actually get it right? Well, as you might have guessed, the modern answer is a little more nuanced.
It turns out they were both kind of right and also kind of wrong. The localizers, they were definitely onto something. We know for a fact now that specific brain areas do have specific jobs. That frontal lobe where Phineas was injured, yeah, that's a huge deal for personality and making decisions. But the whole brainers also had a point. The brain isn't just a collection of separate parts. It's all deeply connected in this incredibly complex network. It's not about simple organs. It's about systems working with other systems.
So this incredible, gruesome story about a 19th century railroad worker really helped kickstart the journey into modern neuroscience. And even with everything we've learned since then, the story of Phineas Gage is this great reminder that we've really only just mapped the rough outlines. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other fundamental truths about our own minds are still out there, just waiting to be discovered?